On y va? Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je m'appelle Anne Lagacé Dowson. Je suis journaliste et la personne qui se charge de la communication pour la Coalition canadienne de la santé. Je suis là ce matin avec Charlie Angus, député, et Farid Khan of the Anti-Hate Network.
Canadians United Against Hate.
Right. So the two of us are here, the three of us are here to talk about Flag Day. On est là pour le jour du drapeau, puis aussi pour vous parler de l'engagement pour le Canada, le pledge pour le Canada. Ça fait 60 ans qu'on a adopté l'unifolié et c'est paru en premier au Québec, ironiquement, bien avant que le Canada l'adopte, parce que l'érable, on sait bien, on l'admire pour sa beauté, pour son sirop. C'est d'ailleurs une espèce qui est en danger à cause des changements climatiques. Je voulais vous dire aussi que je ne suis pas une personne qui brandit un drapeau particulièrement, mais moi, ce que je pense, quand je pense à l'érable, c'est le petit épingle que mon père a porté pendant toute la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, alors qu'il était en Europe en train de se battre contre les fascistes et les nazis. 5 ans de sa vie à partir de l'âge de 19 ans. Alors, le drapeau canadien a été un peu abîmé par le convoi, l'image qu'on en avait du drapeau, on l'a beaucoup vu au convoi, mais là, le drapeau se fait réhabiliter par les menaces de Trump. Alors, les gens resserrent les rangs et se réaccaparent le drapeau. C'est vraiment intéressant. Même au Québec, où les choses canadiennes ne poignent pas bien, le Bloc québécois, les nationalistes québécois se rangent de plus en plus derrière le drapeau canadien. C'est vraiment intéressant à voir. Et d'ailleurs, les sondages de léger marketing font preuve d'une colère montante au Québec, le sentiment anti-américain croissant des Québécois qui ne veulent plus aller en Floride. Vous savez qu'ils vont en grand nombre. Veulent plus acheter des produits américains. C'est de plus en plus fréquent qu'on entend parler de ça en français au Québec. Alors, je vous invite à signer l'engagement pour le Canada. Je vous invite aussi à participer à la résistance aux oligarques américains et canadiens, entre autres, à participer au boycott d'Amazon, parce que vous savez qu'Amazon a fermé 7 entrepôts au Québec. Pas un, pas celui qui se syndiquait, mais tous les entrepôts au Québec. Et c'est comme ça que ces compagnies d'oligarques se comportent envers les Québécois et les Canadiens. C'est inacceptable. Alors, il faut se battre. Il y a une manif le 15 à Montréal. Il y a également une réunion à Halifax qui s'appelle « For the many, not the money ». Alors là, c'est de plus en plus fréquent ce genre de résistance. Alors, il faut se joindre à la résistance. Il faut être fier de ce qui nous différencie des États-Unis. L'assurance maladie universelle, les congés parentaux, les pensions, le chômage, la civilité en général et le fait qu'on s'occupe de notre monde. Alors, je vais inviter Farid à prendre la parole et après Charlie Angus.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Charlie, for having me here. I'd like to acknowledge that we are speaking from the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. My name is Farid Khan. I'm a human rights activist and anti-hate activist and the founder of the advocacy group Canadians United Against Hate. Tomorrow, February 15th, is Canada's Flag Day. It marks the 60th anniversary of the adoption of the red and white maple leaf flag, a symbol of Canada recognized around the world and a symbol that Canadians are very proud to display. As we mark this occasion, we're reminded of the values that have made Canada a beacon of hope and freedom. But today we're also reminded of the very real threat hanging over our country, the threat of Donald Trump and his fascist and racist ambitions. I'm here to speak today as a Canadian citizen, as an immigrant, as a child of refugee parents. I'm here to speak for the millions of Canadians who are watching with alarm as Canada-U.S. relations worsen day by day with every new word that comes out of the mouth of Donald Trump as he refers to Canada. And because of Trump's threats to wreck Canada's economy and annex us as the 51st state. I'm here to say to Donald Trump and his MAGA cultists that Canada will never become part of the U.S., and it'll only happen when hell freezes over and all Canadians are gone from this land. For my entire life, Canada has stood tall as a nation that values diversity, equity, and inclusion. But with Trump's threats, these values are also under threat. A vision of the future under Trump can be seen in the fascist edicts which that have come out of his office, which target migrants, refugees, the LGBTQ2 community, women, Muslims, vulnerable minorities. Edicts which perpetuate hate, bigotry, misogyny, transphobia, and xenophobia, and violate fundamental human rights. And make no mistake, Trump is a fascist. That's not my assessment, but that of 11 former high-ranking officials from his previous administration, including his longest-serving chief of staff and his former chief of defense staff. My parents and millions of others chose to emigrate to Canada because of its values and the economic opportunities it presented. They chose to settle here over other nations because they wanted their children to be Canadian, not American. And so it's only natural that immigrants, along with all patriotic Canadians, stand up and defend our country against Trump's unofficial declaration of war, which is what his threats to impose 25% tariffs and annex Canada are. Trump's repeated comments about annexing Canada and his actions reveal a sociopathy that was described in detail in the 2017 book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. In it, 27 psychiatrists and mental health professionals made it clear that Trump is a sociopath who poses a threat not just to the U.S., but to the entire world. Some of the assessments of Trump's personality in the book include the following, and mind you, these are assessments made by professionals who work in the area of mental health. Trump is an impulsive, immature, incompetent person who, when in the position of ultimate power, would easily slide into the role of tyrant. His sociopathic characteristics are undeniable and present a profound threat to democracy. He is profoundly an evil man exhibiting malignant narcissism. And if left unchecked, his pathological narcissism could lead to World War III. I would encourage members of the media who haven't looked at this book to please take a look at it and get a real look into the kind of person that Donald Trump is, if you don't know already from the insanity that comes out of his mouth. To our political leaders, I say Canada cannot engage with him as we do with other normal leaders. He has shown himself to be an enemy to Canada, and we have to treat him as a clear and present danger to our country and to our allies. And to the Canadian media, I say, begin telling the story of the fascist sociopath occupying the White House using that language so that Canadians in the world know the very real danger he presents to peace and stability. During World War II, over 45,000 Canadian soldiers, sailors, and airmen paid the ultimate price to defend Canada from a fascist threat, as did millions of others from allied nations. Let's not let those sacrifices be in vain as we face another fascist threat today. And as we mark the 60th anniversary of the Canadian flag, all Canadians who say that they love Canada, who want to continue to build the just society that Pierre Trudeau spoke of over 50 years ago, who want to protect our communities from the fascist, racist, misogynistic, and transphobic demagogue that is trying to destroy Canada, we need to stand together and defend our flag, our country, and our sovereignty. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Good morning, Wache. Joyeuse Saint-Valentin. Et nous nous préparons ce matin à célébrer le 60e anniversaire du drapeau du Canada. Le drapeau est un symbole de nos valeurs et notre démocratie. Et je suis ici ce matin pour déclarer que les Canadiens vont défendre notre démocratie, pas la menace de M. Trump et son gang de bandits à Washington. M. Trump a attaqué notre souveraineté, il a attaqué notre valeur. C'est clair, M. Trump est un ami de Vladimir Poutine, mais il déteste le Canada. OK. Nous le comprenons. Mais je suis inspiré par Madame et Monsieur tout le monde partout au Canada qui ont commencé le boycott contre les produits américains, le boycott pour les vacances. C'est essentiel pour tous les Canadiens de travailler ensemble maintenant pour opposer la menace de M. Trump et son gang. Et je suis très fier de participer avec le groupe qui ont signé l'engagement pour Canada. C'est un moment pour rallier les Canadiens, pour défendre notre démocratie, nos valeurs et nos pays. Good morning and happy Valentine's Day. I want to say this morning how much I love my country. We don't tend to do that in Canada. We think that that's kind of gauche. We don't feel we need to say how much we love our country. But when we see the criminal gang that has taken control in Washington telling us we do not have a right to our nation, well, oh yeah. Not only am I going to love my country and its values and the people from one end of this beautiful nation to another, but I'm going to work with those ordinary Canadians to defend our right to continue to exist as an independent nation. And for this, on the eve of the 60th anniversary of the Canadian flag, I encourage Canadians to reflect what that symbol means. That symbol that has been in war zones. That symbol that has been, as Canadians went to fight famines in other countries. That symbol of openness and inclusion that is the direct opposite to the politics of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. This week we saw the shameful actions by Donald Trump to negotiate with Vladimir Putin, another gangster, to sell the people of Ukraine out. Mr. Putin thinks that Vladimir Putin is a savvy genius and he detests our country. Well, he's sending us a very clear message of the kind of man he is. Our neighbors are no longer our allies. We are dealing with a regime next door to us that is ignoring the international rule of law, and we have to take this dead serious. As a nation, with our political leaders, but with ordinary Canadians. So what do we do right now? Well, I'm extremely encouraged by the incredible response we've received from the Pledge for Canada that's now, just in the space of 2 weeks, had over 62,000 people sign up. People from across the political spectrum. Former Prime Minister Kim Campbell, former Attorney General Alan Rock, former Premier Danny Williams, but also the incredible artists and Indigenous activists and labor activists and ordinary people across this country who said that there's a value to our nation that we're willing to defend. And I also want to encourage and thank the ordinary people who on their own began the boycott of all things American. Now, some might think, well, you know, if you just choose not to go down to Tennessee this year, who's going to notice? Well, right now we're seeing the American tourism industry is in full-on panic. There are now over $2 billion in travel that is at risk. That's 140,000 American jobs. That's if just 10% of Canadians cancel their trips. It's still too early to say how many are canceling, but from the evidence that we're gathering, it's much, much higher than 10%. And it's about sending a message to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who said Canada was going to learn a lesson. Oh, really? Texas is going to teach Canada a lesson. Well, we've got $400 million worth of travel that goes to Texas, Mr. Abbott. How about we teach you a lesson and say, we got better places to go than Texas. If that's your attitude of Canadians, we will not go. Hell no, we will not go. The boycott is going to target many, many areas of the United States that are very vulnerable right now. Kentucky has already started to speak up about the huge losses that they're facing in Kentucky bourbon and Kentucky whiskeys because their number one market is Canadians. So when Canadians stop buying, it's sending a message. And we know this is the only way right now that Americans are going to be able to put pressure on Donald Trump. Because what's at risk here is the future of an international order where we respect the rights of countries to be independent, we respect the international rule of law, we respect our neighbors and borders, and this is something Mr. Trump is saying he will not respect. So on this festival where we celebrate Canada as a nation and our flag, I am encouraged. I want to thank Canadians. I want to say we are strong, we do not bend, and we will never, ever, ever kiss the ring of that gangster from Mar-a-Lago. So let's celebrate the 60th anniversary for Canada and our flag in a way that we have never done before. Thank you, merci. We'll take any questions.
We've heard from you before this idea that you'd like to see your party continue to be able to work with the Liberals to keep Parliament going. Is that your view still, that you'd like to see whoever becomes the next Prime Minister to strike a deal with the NDP to keep Parliament moving?
Since January 6th, the world for Canada has turned upside down. We are in completely uncharted territory. And nobody can say they have a plan to deal with this. None of our comms teams, none of our political planners. There's not a politician who's ready to deal with the crisis, because this is the biggest crisis we've seen since the 1930s. So my simple position as a member of Parliament is to encourage all parliamentarians to say, let's go back to Parliament. Let's see if we can put a plan in place to get Canada through this period. There'll be lots of time to bicker and batter, as we love to do. But right now, I think my focus is Canada.
Your party only has about 140 candidates right now. Is the NDP ready for an early election as soon as next month?
You'd have to ask the NDP strategy team. I don't have any knowledge of what the preparations are. My focus is Canada.
On the topic that my colleague just brought up, a little bit of a different focus, is now perhaps the right time for an early election, given the uncertainty surrounding Donald Trump, his administration, and the threat of tariffs?
I think what people were thinking in January 1st and what people saw after January 6th, our world has turned upside down. And we see that Mr. Trump is continuing to attack and menace not just Canada, but the international order. I'm just one parliamentarian. I'm ready to go back to Parliament and make it work. I'm willing to do whatever I have to try and put a plan in place to help Canada get through this. Maybe there will be an election, maybe there won't. But I think we all have an obligation right now to try to reassure Canadians that we are there for them and that we will do our job to get through what is unprecedented turbulence.
On that point of things getting turned around, we've seen the polls get turned around too. The Liberals have really jumped, and some of that increase has been at the expense of the New Democrats. What do you think is going on with Canadians that are seeing New Democrat voters seemingly leave to go to the Liberals right now?
I don't ever worry about polls. The issue is that whenever there's a leadership race, people get excited. There's a lot of media. So I'm not worried about the polls. My focus right now is what do we do to go back to Parliament and try and get a plan for Canadians. That is where we have to stay focused.
What should that plan look like?
Right now, I think we have to go back and say, what is it going to mean to work as a Parliament to put in place the measures at the federal level to withstand the threats, not just economic threats, but the threats to the international order, the threats that we're seeing to NATO, the threats to our sovereignty. There's so many things that we could be doing, but to do that, we all have to agree that right now Canada's primary focus needs to be Canada.
With the Trump tariff threats, it's kind of sparked some conversations that a lot of our oil is flowing north to south rather than east-west and to ports, I guess, and it's exposed a weakness in Canadian energy. Some complain that the NDP stood in the way of these pipelines, as well as some First Nations. What would you think about that? Would you be willing to work more to get some of these projects going forward?
Well, it's amazing. You know, never give up a good opportunity to burn the planet when there's a crisis. Canadians paid $34 billion to build a pipeline. Canadians are subsidizing over 50 cents on every dollar for the pipeline. To be told that Canada hasn't done its share, why aren't we talking about the huge opportunities to reinvest across the board with energy? The idea that we're going to spend 15 years building a pipeline to oppose Trump when we've just built a pipeline, I'd like to see what the oil sector is going to do. They're making record profits. I haven't seen them offer to do anything yet, except we've seen Madame Smith say that any efforts to have oil and the energy sector play their part as some kind of threat to Canada. So this is all speculation. But there's huge things that we could do across our regions that would get bigger bang for the buck. So if they want to post trial balloons, go ahead. But I think there's many opportunities that we can have to make a resilient economy right now in the short term.
Take it out.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci. C'est ce qui conclut la conférence de presse.
Thank you.
Merci.